Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to present this topic because it's basically going to simplify how we're going to see child development and generally human development. Because in society, we think that development stops, right? And that tends to scare a lot of parents and probably have scared you, right? At a certain point, you thought that, oh, what will happen to my child? Um, am I able to help in this development? Is it too late? Is the age going to matter, etc., etc.? Right? All these thoughts and fears about development, your child development, is going to attack you until you're going to understand the concept of development. And when you do understand the concept of development, as I'm going to explain now, you're going to basically rest and make sure that you do the essential things that will help your child start processing the development that is necessary for him or her. Right? So let's talk about development. Now, in neuroscience today, it's known that the brain has the ability to form new neuron connections, right? And this is known as neuroplasticity. In some domains, they are saying that uh, the brain stops developing at a certain age. Generally, they say at 25 or 28 years old. And they say that after 28, the brain cannot form new connections. And that is wrong, actually. The brain has the capacity, has the ability to form new neural connections at every given moment. It is going to be hard because basically we're changing our beliefs. Every time we think about something new, every time we try to change ourselves, etc., our brain is basically rewiring itself. Because the brain is going to wire and create a set of basically mechanisms that allows us to adapt to the environment. But as we start changing ourselves, changing our beliefs, our knowledge, etc., etc., the brain is going to start changing the neural connections. So this concept of the brain is not going to develop is basically wrong. And we have to understand that the brain develops in a certain environment. So development in general is going to happen in a certain environment. And we're going to discuss what development is, but generally everything develops in a environment, right? If we look outside the windows, we see trees. Those trees require a specific environment. The trees in Africa requires different environment than the trees in Europe, for example, right? So the environment is a critical part in life. And this is something that basically modern science is somehow putting aside and only focusing on the material stuff, which is like genetics and stuff like that, but they're not considering the environmental factors. Development is based on the environment, and that is manifested in children as they're developing, and even adults with the social circle that they're in, children, if they're in school, right? So our social environment determines our development. There's a very famous quote like, tell me who you surround yourself with, and I will tell you who you are, right? So basically, we surround ourselves with the people who are giving us a specific development that is needed by us, right? And if this need is not being fulfilled, we're going to seek a specific environment that is going to fulfill that need. For example, I'm going to give you an example. If, let's say, I grew up uh, lacking attention, right? Maybe my family, etc. I grew up without father figure, etc. I didn't have an attention that is needed. So I grew up and I started seeking that attention in specific social settings, right? Like maybe going out with friends, maybe smoking, etc. Right? So I got my inner need by the environment, and I developed in that environment, basically. So the need is what's going to drive the development. Okay? And in every human development, there is this inner need that is very crucial for our development, right? Babies have needs, and children, as they're growing, toddlers, etc., they have needs. And everyone, every human has a core need that we're going to be discussing here that are essential for their brain, for their physical body, and the experiences that they're gaining and how they can implement it in the best optimal way possible. Okay? So development is never ending transformational power in reality that is created by God, Allah, creation, nature. You can name it basically what you want, but there's this amazing power all around us that is basically pushing life into growth, into transformation. So if we look outside, we see trees. Maybe they are still, but they're working from the inside. They're always having this transformational power. And we humans as well, we're basically changing every day, right? We're forming new experiences, we're forming new memories. And this transformational power is so critical in our development because we're basically using that power for our benefit. And as long as we know what our benefits are, we're going to start uh, implementing the things that are going to improve our skills, things that will make us better, more skillful, more adaptive to the environment, more useful, more valuable, etc., etc., right? So we're going to start developing these skills, these tendencies to improve ourselves as we start noticing this power that is within us. So this development is basically driven by this power that is within us. And for humans, we are developing basically on two main levels. And this could be, of course, different from other living entities like plants or animals. We also have a mind. So we're basically developing our physical body, so we're growing. But we also have this very unique paradigm that is energetic, that is mental, that helps us to create things and expand and build on knowledge, wisdom, etc. And that is the mental development. So humans have a mental development and they also have a physical development. So what are the physical development and the human development? And wait, I said, I'm like you said that development never stops, but physical health will stop at a certain point, right? Correct, but our cells in our body is always creating, is always regenerating, right? We're always developing, even at the physical level. Yes, growth will stop at a certain point, but our body is always creating. So, for example, if we have damaged nerves, for example, which is the case in many kids today because they have weak bodies, and our environment is toxic, um, these nerves have the ability to regenerate, right? Just like any other cell in the body. We break a bone, then it takes a few days, few weeks, few months, etc. And then we start feeling better, and then the bone is healed. The same thing with everything in the body, just more details on that. Certain um, cells in the body will take longer to heal than others. Okay? Nerve cells can definitely be longer to heal, but it's possible. Like, it's not something that is impossible to heal, especially if we're doing the right things. So, human development is physical and mental. And yes, we can improve our physical state, we can improve our physical development, and we can improve our mental development. So, human development never stops because development is life. If we are not developing on a mental level, if we're not developing on a physical level, then we are basically regressing. And those two aspects, mental and physical, have a lot to do with a lot of things like social interactions, bonding with people, loving others, etc. If we're not developing in all these areas, then we're going to be depressed, we're going to be regressing, we're going to be very anxious, very stressed. And that is basically terrible, right? So humans are always developing, even us, right? We're always developing. It's not only child development, although child development is very crucial because children will learn very fast because their brain is expanding. They have new neurons being grown in their brain every second, every minute. So they can learn like a sponge, right? But that doesn't mean that adults do not develop as well, right? So even if we are 80 years old, 90 years old, we're still in good health, we can definitely develop, right? So the body and the mind has a supernatural ability, blessed by nature, God, Allah. Okay, so development might be slowed down. Okay, and this is the critical thing that's happening in child development. So as the child is starting to develop, something is basically slowing down the child's development, right? We can say that, okay, this thing that is slowing down the child may be a drug, a medication, maybe a vaccination trigger, maybe a seizure after effect, maybe hospitalization, right? There are several things that might happen, and also there are symptoms that might happen that are going to slow down the child's development. So let's talk about these symptoms. One of these main symptoms that we're all familiar with is autism. Autism is a symptom. Okay, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It has a collection of causes, but we're not going to discuss it here. But autism is one of these things that are going to slow down the child's development and create a regressive pattern that is, if accepted by the child and the environment, the child will regress and not develop. Okay, so autism is basically going to slow down the child's development. And if we accept autism to do that, and if we accept the child to regress and stay back, we're going to allow basically the regression to happen, and we're going to prevent child development. Okay, so autism, just like any other thing that is causing these regressions, like it's very evident that there are certain medications that are going to slow down the nervous system, right? And sadly enough, there's so many of these kids that are taking medications that are affecting their development, right? So, like the ADHD, for example, medications and seizure medications, etc. So, all these medications are basically like autism, but autism is not a medication, it's a symptom that was created basically by the psyche, by the child, in order to basically isolate him or herself from the environment. And that symptom is going to create regression. Okay? So development might be slowed down or regressed backward by this power, but this power is always available in all ages. Okay? So let's say a person who is 80 who has Alzheimer, the individual might start forgetting things, right? But that doesn't mean we can't improve his or her life and improve the brain connections, improve the nervous system, and then the symptoms will go away, right? So in each stage of life, development exists, and in each stage of life, regression can exist. Okay? The only thing is, if the regression happens during child development, this will prevent the child from catching on the early milestones that are necessary, like speech, right? And like social interactions and communication, etc. Okay? So what are some of the key points? Let me just zoom in here. Okay. So what are some of the key points? The key points are, it is easier to learn the younger you are, right? So children who are younger will learn faster, and that is because the brain is developing faster. We constantly need to learn, or we lose the skill of learning. This is very important. If the child, or if even us as adults, if we're not putting something into practice on a daily basis, we're going to basically forget how to do it, right? Like maybe playing the piano. It's a skill that can be lost. Playing the guitar as well, right? There are certain things that maybe will still stick with us, but in general, skills need to be practiced on a daily basis, right? And especially for children. So kids with autism, for example, they might be trained for certain days, but other days they're not trained. And this is a problem because autism is not having any time frame that it's appearing, it's there with the child. That's why our approach is very different, and we're taking the whole lifestyle change for the child, right? And we're doing it together with a parent-led intervention and home-based approach. Okay? So we constantly need to learn, and we constantly need to improve our development. We need to get better. We cannot start maybe doing, let's say, playing a song on the piano, and then later on we're basically going back to basics, right? So we always have to take next levels and pick up new challenges, and keep practicing, because if we don't do that, we're going to lose the skill. Okay, and the most important skill of all is learning, right? The skill of learning, the skill of being curious to learn, being curious to be involved. And that is the key element that autism takes away from the child. When autism happens, the child is now not interested in creating opportunities that will allow for development. And basically, the child will start refusing to engage, refusing to communicate, right? And those losses are basically going to be very detrimental for the development, because the child now does not want to learn. Okay? So the third point here is we need to put things into practice, because each skill, including learning, right? Learning is a skill, can be lost. So we talked about the two main levels of development, the physical development and the mental development. What is the physical development? Basically, physical development, and when we talk about physical, we're meaning the organs, the bones, the muscles, the nerves, the tissues, right? The basic body function is to basically sustain life. We're always creating cells. One cell goes into two cells, right? And one cell might replicate into one, but basically we're going to create cells and improve life. Life is sustaining itself, right? So how we're going to address physical development, how we're going to improve physical development. We make sure that our physical development is anchored in as we give our bodies the essential nutrients, the sleep, and the movements that are necessary. And those are the nutrition, the breathing, the sleep, right? So sleep here, if we're talking for children, we want 10 to 12 hours, and 10 hours is minimum. Like 12 hours is like it's a minimum, but also like I would say like 12 hours is the healing. If we're looking at healing power of sleep, we're looking at 12 hours, right? Because we're not working with children that are healthy, for example. But although I think that 12 hours is never going to be harmful, right? But in order to tap to this healing power of sleep, like sleep is very, very helpful for the body and the nerves and the brain, etc. So sleep is necessary. We have breathing, um, nose breathing, nose breathing. That's very essential, right? And we also need to make sure that we're not having no shallow breathing, right? Because in most cases, people are stressed. And when we are stressed, we're basically shallow breathing. That means that the nervous system is not breathing properly. Breathing should not be thought of, like it should come automatically. And the reason why we're having shallow breathing is because our nervous system is stressed. So when we look at all these things, those are what's going to help our physical development, right? From nutrition, taking in the important and necessary nutrients, from breathing, from sleep, from natural light, and natural light skylight, getting incandescent light bulbs, making sure that we're using blue light glasses. I'm not wearing one, but I'm guilty, but those are necessary, right? So protecting our natural environment, and that's basically what we're doing here. We're fixing our environment, physical environment, both externally and internally, right? So our physical environment and our physical inner environment, okay? The nutrition, we're addressing that through the diet, of course. The breathing, we have to calm down the nervous system, and also we're being impacted by each other. Like for example, breathing is one of the main nonverbal communication. Basically, how do you call that? Basically, breathing is very influential. So if you're basically sitting in a room with a group of people who are having shallow breathing, I keep saying breath, shallow breathing, you're basically going to have shallow breathing. And that nonverbal communication is basically affected by the environment, right? So we're basically getting influenced by those who are around us. So if we basically focus on our breathing as a whole in the house, for example, we're going to all help each other. We're always going to remind each other, start breathing, right? Fix your posture because that's going to affect your breathing as well. So breathing is an environmental thing, right? So the more that we focus on it, the more that we start getting better at breathing. There's no way around it. So basically, we just have to remind ourselves to breathe, make sure that others are aware of the benefits of breathing. We're reminding them and they're reminding us. We're always keeping a good posture. And if we see others having bad posture, we tell them. So this environmental change is very essential. And adding on that, helping the nervous system, right? So fixing the autonomic nervous system. Okay, when we fix the autonomic nervous system, we're going to basically get automatic breathing, right? So there will not be any shallow breathing. Okay, sleep for adults 8 hours minimum, 8 to 9 hours, 10 hours. You can even like nurture yourself with 12 hours. Like like sleep is never bad, right? Maybe if you're sleeping in the day and you're not sleeping at night, that's bad. But sleep in general, whenever the sun goes down, is perfect. Natural light, essential. So whatever screens we're using, we're making sure that we're limiting it, especially after the sun comes down. We're taking in natural light as much as we can. We're changing the light bulbs to incandescent light bulbs. That's very, very good. Okay. So there are several things that we can do here, but just being aware of these and including them in our lifestyle will help our physical development. Okay, light has a lot to do with our metabolism, with our cellular function, with our brain function, with our eyes, which are basically connected to our brain, with our state of mind, with our happiness. So there's a lot to do with the light. Movement as well is also very important. And if we're not doing proper movement, we're going to have a lot of pains, we're going to have a lot of stagnation, and we're going to have a lot of mobility problems, etc., etc. So that is also a very important part of physical development. Basically, those who do not practice running, they will never know how to run, right? Those who do not try to walk, they will not walk, right? So movement is very essential, and it's part of our physical development. So let's go into the basically the fruitful part that we're all looking at, because this is something that we're addressing easily through our coaching, but this is a more maybe difficult section, but it's something that is like we're addressing at a core level with kids. So what is mental development? It is how we understand the environment around us and in us. The same thing. You can see, like, we're having the physical outside of us and physical inside of us, right? And we also have the mental outside of us and the mental inside of us, right? So how we see ourselves and how we see our reality, okay? And this is also known as within, so without. So addressing it, we need to look back at what is holding us back from traumas. Okay, this is very, very important. Limiting beliefs about life, about ourselves, about resistances to change and develop and overcome. This is not only something that is concerning for kids, right? Kids with autism, but also for everyone, right? So, for example, I definitely have traumas, I definitely have limiting beliefs. Everyone have these that are basically creating resistances and not allowing us to develop. So basically, these resistances, these traumas, these limiting beliefs that we might have are preventing us from development. Okay, so this is how we address it. This, if we think that there's something else that is limiting us from developing, then we're going to miss the point, because it's us that we have to address, right? We have to address our traumas. We have to address our limiting beliefs. And of course, for kids, we're going to do that for them by understanding their life more, understanding their past, and working on observing their life situation, observing their environment, and basically working with the core essential child development milestones that are necessary. So the mind is the operating system that manages our life, right? It's always directing. And that's very important, because kids, when they're growing up, they are not born with an optimal mind, right? They start developing the mind. And the way that they do that is through the parent-child relationship, right? The mind is going to be developed as the child starts to engage in these social relations. And the first social relations is going to be between the parent and the child. Okay, so the mind is the operating system that directs us. So it develops with the child. So the mind allows us to take rational decisions in an ever-changing world. Okay, so this is what's different between what we're doing and what schools and therapies and treatments are doing. What we are doing, we're fixing the dynamic way of processing information for the child. We're helping the child to start thinking dynamically. Okay, we're basically not making the child think statically and memorize and stuff. We're fixing the core things that the child needs help with, right? Because, like, for example, an example of static way of addressing autism is making the child memorize things, and the child will basically memorize it and implement it. Okay? But if we're thinking about dynamically, we're going to help the child start thinking about eye contact. It's not bad. Thinking about communication. Thinking about not being stubborn, right? Thinking about listening to orders, being led, etc. So when we're talking about changing things that are changing, dynamic. So I basically left this for basically keyword notice. So if it's repetitive, then it's static. Okay, static is not changing. So in early child development, babies start developing statically only. Like, they don't operate, their brain is not functioning in a dynamic way. So all babies start static. They just want to eat, they want to poop, right? They want to sleep. That's basically it. And they do that for an extended period of time, and then slowly they will start including the dynamic processing. Okay? So children with autism are basically diagnosed after 6 months. So before 6 months, there's no symptoms of autism. The symptom autism doesn't appear. After 6 months, it's going to appear. And that is because the dynamic processing is all what it do. Like, so problems with autism is here in the dynamic processing. Okay? I'm not saying here that the static processing is not important. Static is important because we need to do something that is repetitive, right? Um, but we don't want to only do something that is repetitive. We want to do something that is changing as well, because that's what's going to help us uh, develop and take on challenges and basically eliminate autism. That's how we eliminate autism, when we start including the dynamic processing in the child. To overcome this transition, okay, the child must go through a developmental process that prepares him or her for the dynamic world. Not all humans are prepared equally. Okay, so the transition here between from static to start working into the static and dynamic, the child will start basically taking on certain tools and resources that are going to allow him or her to start operating in a dynamic world. Okay? To overcome this transition, there are three major things that are very essential. Okay? I call them the three L's. Okay? The first L is to be led. Okay? So children need to be led. So these are actually what are the needs that we were talking about. If you can remember from here, we said the mind might have certain traumas and certain limiting beliefs and certain resistances that is going to prevent development, right? And these are the needs. These are the needs that if the child doesn't have, especially if children are triggered, if they have anything specific that is basically bringing the symptom of autism, there will be child development. There will be child regression in the child developmental regression here. Okay, so the child will not go into the development because this is scary. To know that something is going to change, it's scary, right? It's not the same old repetitive thing that's happening on and on and on. It's something that is unpredictable, right? So basically, the dynamic way of life, it can be scary, can be unpredictable, can be challenging, but this is life, right? So children with autism said that, oh, I don't want that part. But we all know that this is an essential part in life. And for them to be independent, for them to be to adapt to society. We cannot bend society to their needs. They have to start operating in a dynamic way, right? So when we look at that, dynamic processing, so kids can see that dynamic processing is difficult, right? Like, for example, a child might think that playing football is something that is difficult. I don't want to play football. It makes me scared. I just want to play at home with my own toys, etc. Right? There are certain beliefs, right? So let's just cut out the examples and just go into the major things that are creating these limiting beliefs. So every human on earth has three major L's, basically, or three major needs during the developmental transition. Okay, this is this transition. The first L is to be led. We all want to be led as children. The second one is to be loved. And the third L is to be legitimized. These three L's play a significant part in child development and in human development because they are essential needs in life. Okay? So when it comes to being led, Children need to be led so they feel safe. Okay, this is going to be very paradoxical, but it's going to make sense, I promise. Children need to be led so they feel safe. They love to make sure that they are under a firm leadership that does not give in and is always stable. Right? It's basically like knowing that, oh, I'm being watched over by this supreme power that knows what's right and what's wrong, right? So if the child is not being led in a firm way, because the child will basically try to break the law at a certain point, right? And this human behavior is typically to test the grounds. And this is found everywhere. It's found in parent-child dynamic. It's found in child-teacher dynamic. It's found in husband-wife dynamic, girls, boys dynamic, friendship. There's always a testing of boundaries, right? We test the boundaries of others to see basically if that individual is safe. This happens unconsciously. It's not like the child is doing it intentionally, but basically this inner need, as we said, this natural power, this is a natural power. Like, it's not something that we are basically directing consciously. Nature is creating it, right? So this power is basically telling the child to be led, and the child is trying to be led, and the child is trying to do something, and the child needs a law, needs specific rules. And when these rules are established and the child is aware of them, the child will feel safe. Okay? So, to summarize that point, if a child is at home and the house has certain rules, right, that are unbreakable, and basically it's not like unjustifiable rules, right? These are values that everyone agrees on, right? Like no hitting, no screaming, right? Like we always respect each other, etc., etc. These laws are not broken, right? So the child in that is growing in that environment is going to feel safe. Okay? So one of the main things that are needed in this transition is this safety. Okay? So in each child it's different, in each human it's different. Like I'm not saying that like we have all these missing, but it happens in a very large spectrum, right? But generally, this is an important need that we want in life, right? We want to be led by something. We want to know that we can trust this reality. And if we think that we cannot trust this reality, we're always going to be living in the static. We're always going to be in this state of fear, of fight or flight, basically. So we want to know that, oh, this reality is safe. And when we do that, we're going to be led by this reality, okay? They will try to test the grounds to see if they are being led. Children might break things, might do things wrong that they know that it is wrong, just to see if there's going to be a consequence, right? Because basically they want to affirm that there's a consequence. Okay, this happens also with between like women and men, where like the woman is going to test the man and the man is testing the woman, right? The same thing is going to happen here. So the child is going to be testing the grounds, testing the environment to see if there's going to be consequences. So the child will start to see if they can do what they want or they cannot do what they want. If they do what they want and no one stops them, they will start thinking that the world is scary and that it is not safe. So they must try to control it. And that's when the child will start seeing that, oh, I am in control. That means that this is how the world works, right? So automatically this scarcity will start to manifest in, I'm going to start taking things into my own hands, into my own matters, right? I'm going to snatch something if I want it. I'm going to do whatever I want. Or if I didn't get it, I'm going to fight for it, right? So on the other hand, if they tested the grounds and they saw that their parents are having certain principles that basically are understood by the child, and that there are these set of rules and there are these principles basically in the reality that they're living in, they will feel safe. Okay? They will feel safe, they will feel protected, and basically they will feel like there's no need for them to be in control. So they will relax. They will just be led, and that is going to fulfill their need. Okay, which will create trust for the child, and this is a major prep for the transition. Okay, for this transition. Okay, so this is very important to be led, number one. Number two is to be loved. Okay, we all love our children, of course, but basically if we look at society, in our schools, in our university, in our social standards, etc., love is being very binary and very misunderstood. So what is true love and what is the true love that is needed? Kids want to be loved like no one else. Okay, and this is not only for kids, this is for everyone. Everyone needs to know that they are special, right? How can I give a perfect example here? There's this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I read one line there that says that one of the biggest desires that any human has is the desire to be special and to know that they are special, right? So we have this love that needs to be special when we are handed this love, because love is basically an exchange that we basically appreciate, we unconditionally love someone, but it has to be different, right? So love is not equal. So if I have 5 kids, I cannot love all my kids equally, right? I know it sounds weird, but love is not binary. So basically, the love that I have for one child is going to be different than the love that I have for another child. But it doesn't mean that I love one over the other, right? It's just the type of love, the type of connection that I had with this child is very different, right? So love is a bond. It's not something that is internalized and then externalized. It's a bond that is formed. And kids want to be loved like no one else, right? Like they want their unique bond. Okay? So this secondary need is very, very crucial in the developmental transition. Okay? So kids want to be loved like no one else, and all of us need that, even after childhood. That is because true origin of love is not binary or static. Love is the same between humans, is not the same, sorry, between humans, right? You may love each child differently, but love them all, right? You love all your children, no doubts, but each child needs their own love, like their own special love. They want to know that they are special, specially loved, basically. And this is very different than general love that is being promoted, like who is that is generally known. And I know that this is maybe slightly different, but it's a critical thing. It's a critical need. So children, like for example, would say, "Oh, you hate me. You don't love me," right? When they, let's say, see they get jealous or something, you know. So they want a special. They want to know that they're specially loved, and they're okay with others being loved as well, but they want to know that they're specially loved. So this need, the child feels unsafe if it's not present. So if they think they have the same type of love as their siblings or someone else, or if they do not feel loved, okay? So if they have the same type of love that is basically be shown, or maybe more love, but the same type of love, they will sense it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're creating love in terms of a bond. Okay, uh, that's how love is created, and that type of love, whatever the distance is, it will not break it. So when we form love, it's basically a connection. So this is the second need that is essential. And of course, like working on these three main things are going to help us in the transition, okay? And in the child development. And if any of these are basically having issues, having traumas, etc., the flow between the static to the dynamic is going to be very limited and is going to be affected, okay? So those are some of the things that we have to basically study when it comes to how we are operating with our children and the kids who have autism. Like what are the main things that uh, are missing, or the child feels that are missing, right? So when we assess these things, we're going to start working on them. Okay. The third point here is to be legitimized. And this could be like similar to the second one, but it's different, I promise. This is also a very important need that every child needs, to be recognized, to be acknowledged, and to be known as an important member of the environment, to basically stand out. Okay? So we said that love is the bond, but to be legitimized, it's basically more of a social status thing and a self-image thing. Okay, the more that we have a good self-image, the more we have confidence, the more we have self-awareness and capacity to basically take on challenges. So this legitimization is different from attention. When we basically give attention, that is like a um, it's like a short-term, ineffective way of legitimizing, because oh, we're giving attention. But legitimizing is going to be different from an aspect of engulfing the individual's life from A to Z, from respect, from care, from giving high value to one's presence, etc. Okay? So this legitimization is different from attention. Attention does not fulfill this need, but maybe even add to it, to a trauma, because like trauma is not solving the problem, it's basically only masking it. We need to legitimize from a whole perspective, because attention might be fast, might be short term, but legitimization is like looking at the whole individual as a whole life entity, right? From the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep, the moment they're present, the moment that they're not present, etc. Not only this temporary attention. So to be legitimized, we need to know who we are to others, okay? And to see the value or being who we want to be, okay? And this is done by several things, but here are the major three components that I thought about. The number one is giving tasks and real life responsibilities. And of course, those will start with simple things like one step commands, right? Then we go into 2 steps, then 3 steps, right? Chores, etc., right? And those are going to be giving responsibilities where they're going to basically increase value, okay, and self-image. And basically it's going to allow the child to acknowledge that there are problems that the child can solve. And this, of course, increases the self-esteem, the self-worth, and also tells the child that, oh, I am belonging to something bigger. So the child now knows that, oh, I belong to something that is bigger than me. So that is very important. The second point here is status. And status is basically like as we said, like the child needs to be special. Maybe we recognize a specific role that is held valuable, and we're recognizing, basically we're giving an attention but more towards a specific role, right? And we're giving the status, maybe a specific nickname, a specific tag, like that the child creates a sense of identity towards. So this is more into creating identity. Even like for example, we can say nicknames, names even, like one's own name is the best sound one can hear, right? So nicknames, names, the child's name, I mean, and even like certain things that maybe could be funny, could be maybe social, like like for example in the house, let's say Mike is the safety manager, for example, right? Just thinking about something that is random. So this status is going to create a sense of individuality and a sense of status to be legitimized in that social circle. And that is important in the development. And for children, that could be just names, even nicknames, okay? And of course, the general one, this is something that Of course, you know, the caring and genuine emotional presence and support, right? So those three needs are super, super crucial in child development. And like I didn't watch this in something like this took me like months and months and even years, if we can think about it, to just like look at the whole idea of how brain development and mind development gets into, right? So I didn't see that on someone like, but like I didn't, I mean, research it and get it from somewhere. These are the essential key elements in development because I started noticing them in the patterns that are in my life, in other people's life, and in how basically our social life is managed. We need to be led because if we're not led, there's going to be chaos, right? If our social life is not being led, there will be chaos. We're not going to be safe. We're going to be in this static. We're not going to go out of the house, right? If if like led here, like when I'm saying led, like if society is not being led by certain laws, certain rules, uh, certain social morals, etc., then everyone will be scared to go outside, right? Everyone will be so fearful, so protective, etc. And they will not be in a dynamic world, changing, creative world, right? The second point here is loved abundantly, right? If people are not loving each other, there will be a lot of tension, right? And legitimization. We need to have this element of uniqueness and to stand out in society and to basically appreciate one another, or else there will be a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, etc., etc. Right? So these are things that are happening in society and also in child development and also adults, right? So it's not purely with autism, but these are the things that might cripple our development, basically. Okay? So our development as a society, as children development. So these are the critical three key factors, and I hope I didn't make that longer than what it should be, but I think I brought the point here really good. We have the physical and the mental development. The physical development and the mental development never stop at any certain age. To help the physical development, we have to take care of our nutrition, our breathing, our sleep, our natural light, our environment, things that are external and things that are internal, taking care of our nutrition, etc. We also have the mental development, and the mental development is how we see ourselves and how we see our environment, our reality. Is the reality that we're seeing safe, whether we are children or adults? If let's say I'm a child, I'm reading the environment. Is this environment safe? Is this environment being led, right? Is this environment basically going to assist me or lead me? Or I'm going to lead it, right? And how do we see ourselves, right? Who are we? And that is critical in mental development. So when it comes to this transition from the static to the dynamic in child development, autism gets stuck here, and that is basically at 6 months. And if the child did not cross this line, there will be a regression backward. Okay? And maybe not backward, just very slow improvements here. until we resolve the static needs, and then the child will start improving in a dynamic way. Okay? So addressing these three main things are essential for the transition, and these three main things that we were discussing are to be led, like children need to be led, okay? And basically to be led, they have to know that every action that they do, there's a consequence, right? There's punishment and there's reward. Like this is how they navigate. This is how they know what is right and what is wrong. If children were not taught what is wrong and what is right, they will never know because they do not know. So they need to know, and once they know, they start to be led by certain things that they know, right? But if they don't know what's wrong and what's right, they're going to have a lot of problems. Okay, so being firm is actually a very important thing. Um, I'm not sure why other like some circles, some people think that firm parenting is bad, you know, but firm parenting is helping the child in development. And if there's no set of laws, set of principles that allows the child to navigate, there will not be any directions, right? So to be led is to have certain rules, certain guidelines that the child knows and feels safe around. Then the second need is being loved, as we said, in their own unique way. So every child needs to know that they have a special room for mom, special room for dad. They just love to be special and loved in a special way, right? So the good verse that we can remember is, I love you both, but each in your own way, right? So I don't love you like I love your sister, and I don't love your sister like I love you, but I love you both. Okay, so each child needs their own love. Okay, and when we think about it from that perspective, we're basically not giving the same amount of love. We're giving a unique type of love, and that's what is needed. Then the third point is legitimization, and that is basically the praising aspect, recognition, and legitimization. When we're looking at these three main points when it comes to the tasking, like basically being depending on them on certain things, right? I'm depending on you to help me with that, right? It increases the value of someone. Chores, etc. All these are important tasking. And status, not sure I should do that. Status is going to give that legitimization, and of course the caring. I hope this video was not long and it was helpful. Let me know your thoughts about it, and if you do have any questions, let me know in the group and I would love to help. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.